All right, welcome to the new episode of the Grow Food Homestead Podcast, where we discuss many different topics that are related to homesteading, growing your own food, syntropic agroforestry, permaculture principles, food forest design, business, entrepreneurship, mindset, self improvement, health, faith, and much more. Today, I am very excited to introduce our guest. His name is Vadim. He is from Off the Land platform. And how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing very good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Great. Thank you for
Good.
joining us today. So he's actually also in the Florida area, a little bit north from where I am, but we have a very similar growing climate, of course, since we're close proximity. And I just want to get right into it and having the listeners understand, you know, the project that you're working on. So, what inspired you to create Off the Land, and how did the idea come about?
Um, there's been probably many inspiration. I've been gardening in one way or the other pretty much my entire life. But I guess inability to share what you've grown with others. We as gardeners oftentimes plant way too much and have a lot of abundance, and even people like coworkers get tired of our stuff. There is a lot. So I think what inspired the whole off the land thing is just enable people to share, like give away or barter or even sell the abundance that they've grown, like homegrown things or even artisan goods that are local and handmade and uh, don't have toxins and you know those kinds of things.
That is awesome. That, you know, abundance of what we grow and make, and having a place to share it, barter, give it away, and of course sell it to those individuals that need it is a great way to get started in this. So, can you tell us a little bit about exactly what Of the Land is and how does it work?
Yeah, off the land is basically a you can think of it many ways, but it's just a website where people can post a free listing of what they have available to from their garden, for example. Maybe they're from their food forest, or they have bees, or they have a chicken coop and eggs. Whatever their abundance is, it's just a way to like share, sell, trade with their neighbors. Um, and how it works is basically somebody just would just make a free listing. There's no limits of any kind. It's totally free for anybody to use, as many listings as you want. And you basically make a listing, upload some pictures, write some descriptions. We are big on transparency, so we would like you to share like how was it grown. If you use any chemicals, just please disclose that. And then so that's going to live as a listing online, and then people can in your area can look at the pictures, read the descriptions, and they can reach out to you via our built-in messenger. And um, and and from here it kind of works kind of like OfferUp or Craigslist, where you would designate a time to meet with this person and to exchange goods. And then we want to keep everything kind of like trustworthy and comfortable and safe. So we have a review system, so anybody can review the interaction, say how it was. And we're also going to be partnering with like establishments nearby that you can like maybe like a health food store or like a plant nursery that you can meet at this location, and so it's kind of safe and convenient nearby, and hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. So, it seems like it's really tailored towards people that want to grow their own food, make their own products, and source their food locally, right?
Hmm.
So, why do you think it's important in today's world to source your food locally?
Um, yeah, there's a lot to that. There's so many components. Um, I would say that local food, um, there's more transparency. You have better control of the product that you're getting. And to tie into that, the problem that we're experiencing is that our majority of our food is delivered using global supply chains, and they're expensive. On average, the statistic is like they're 1,500 miles per each item on your plate, and they're increasingly becoming vulnerable to disruption or inflation or events that are outside of our control. So by having something come from a locally, it's you're literally investing in your local food supply. So it's a form of resilience, and you're able to know your farmer, and so you're able to influence that farmer and ask and tell them, hey, I prefer food that's grown beyond organic, regenerative, um, and there's also a lot more variety available. So yeah, it's a pretty lengthy question. This could be hours, but there's a lot of shortcuts in the global supply chain at your expense. So there's a lot of shortcuts, like the kind of things that they produce, how they pick it, how they store it, how kind of chemicals have to be sprayed on the product in order for it to survive the transit. They have to be pretty hardy, to be kind of tough, pick tough, pick and ripe, because they have to survive a lot of the shipping, transportation, all that kind of stuff. So just clear across the board, local is the way to go in many, many things, in many different parameters. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let me just try one thing here with the
mhm.
layout. See how, I wonder how it records now. If it's just one screen or both of them. Let me see. No, I think it's just one. All right, no worries. All right, but back to the subject. You know, I think it's a no doubter that growing locally is for our benefit in many ways. But then the tough part is how do we go from the idea of it to actually growing most of our food, right?
Hmm.
And I think that the motivation is there, right? People want to do it. But then in practice, I guess the question that comes to mind is what do we have to sacrifice in order to be able to achieve this goal of going from a global food supply to a more local one?
Yeah, I would say there's a trade-off as far as what's available, immediately available. I think maybe in Florida there's not too much compromise because we have such a diverse growing seasons and time zones. Um, but as far as practically, can we do everything locally? Maybe not right away, because we're going the other way as society, but we can make those gradual changes. Um, so time will tell, but there's definitely a lot we can do little by little to make things available, establish like infrastructure, and I think people already kind of tending to want that kind of change. So um, I think it's within our reach to do something like that.
Definitely. It takes a lot of effort, but I guess where I was going is on an individual basis, with comfort, or easier things to find, is because we are going from producing it ourselves or locally to getting it from a big company that source it somewhere else that's very far away, right?
Mhm.
So if we want to now go back to how things were before, where people would barter more, right? Some people grew some stuff and then they would exchange. That means that we're going to have to sacrifice some comfort, right? And some level of easiness, right? Or something that is easier to go to the grocery store and buy everything in one place versus you growing some of it and bartering and sourcing from multiple different places, right? Locally.
Mhm.
So how do we do that, right? How do we start to make those changes on a personal level, right? And because we all have to eat at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and there's a big desire out there to grow your own food, but then in practice, um, especially in the cities, it's still sort of like a hobby, right? It
Yeah.
hasn't been implemented to the level where the sense of urgency is there. So I guess my question is, how do we individually, can we start doing that? Do you have any ideas?
I think one thing we can all do this week is plant a fruit tree in our lawn, because lawns are basically everywhere, and they take in a lot of time. They take a lot of fuel power, to keep them mowed, and a lot of like fertilizer resources. But they don't really produce anything. And money does grow on trees, but you have to plant that tree. And then in a couple of years, you're going to have something that you can contribute to your local community. If you want something quicker, microgreens, edible mushrooms, things like that. Um, Grow towers, grow bags. I have grow bags this year because I'm renting. So we're growing our own little salad bars basically, and it's not sprayed with any kind of chemicals on display. It's right there. It's beyond organic. It's easy. It's fun. Educational. So there's these little things that we can do. And I guarantee you there's somebody in your neighborhood that's also doing the same thing. And you can find people, connect with people. And this is where it gets fun because now you can start sharing what you're growing. Because once you have a fruit tree kicking in, there's going to be a lot and you're going to use a lot, but you're also going to be wanting to give some away. And if you're a little resourceful, you can find websites like OffTheLand.net or maybe Nextdoor or Craigslist. You can start building those connections around you because you don't have to do it all alone. There's a lot of people who are just like you. They're very much like-minded like you. They want to do that. They want to learn these things. And it's fun. It's good to start little by little and the benefits will present themselves. The dangerous part is not to do anything at all because the global problems, they're not going to be fixed on their own. We have to fix these things.
Yeah, and I think that you could go and just grow something, and the key thing is exchanging and bartering, right? Because and that's why platforms like this, the OffTheLand.net, right,
OffTheLand.net, yes.
is so valuable in creating networks where people locally build those relationships, because there are people out there that are keeping sheep, people that are keeping chickens, some others, of course, with larger space have cattle, right?
Hmm.
And if we build those relationships and we have those platforms that facilitate the communication, then we start learning again how to source our food locally, right? Because we've lost that communication, the knowledge of hey, where do we find this type of food, that type of food, because we only need to go to one place now, and that's the grocery store.
Yeah.
And of course, we're not going to, it's not, the goal is not to eliminate the grocery store. That's not going to happen. And it's not even, you could find things that are um, that can be found locally, but it's about building some level of resilience,
Hmm.
especially on the things that we eat on a regular basis. Why do we need to source it from somewhere so far away if it could be sourced locally,
Yes.
right? So it's a balance. Of course, I don't think the goal is to just not go to the grocery store ever again
No.
or to a farmer's market, right? It's just having different options and encouraging people to grow something themselves so that then they could trade it off or sell it or even just give it away if they want, if they have so much abundance.
Hmm.
And I think one key thing of that, of sourcing food locally, is eating what's in season,
Hmm.
right? Because if we get accustomed to eating what is in season, it is not just beneficial on a economic level, but also for our health. There's a reason why things are in season, because depending what we eat, based on our location, it helps our body as well, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, what can people do to learn how to eat what is in season based on their location?
Well, that's a very good question. I think obviously growing, learning how to grow things on your own, you're going to be definitely already in tune with the nature and season where you live. But there's also options like farmers markets, but you have to kind of watch out for resellers in farmers markets. That's kind of like the downside of farmers markets. If you're not asking the right questions, you're going to be not really getting a good, valuable product. But there's also restaurants that are serving seasonal food, so that's something to look for. But yeah, I totally agree that because we're kind of detached from that, our society just kind of like wants everything on demand right away. But we thought it was convenience, but it's actually detrimental to our health because we're getting the same macronutrients all the time, and we're not getting the seasonal variety, the different colors, the different plants, nutrients and stuff like that. So um,
So you mentioned one thing, that in farmers markets you might get resellers a lot, right? And of course, in places like Florida, we could grow a lot of different things all year round. But in other locations, especially now that we're getting going into winter, uh, resellers might be a big thing, right? Still, as an option, right? So, how is Off the Land going to deal with that? Is it going to be just completely not accepted, or how do you think that's going to work?
yeah, so resellers, it really depends. Because again, like in places like Florida in the South, or at least anywhere in continental United States during the summer, there's plenty of abundance. There's plenty of good things. Um, so definitely, we just want local foods, kind of homegrown, whatever you have from your food forest or your pasture. Um, we don't want resellers. We really want to nurture the local neighbor sharing, that kind of level. Resellers, you can find them anywhere. Unfortunately, even at farmers markets, there's nothing novel or unique about that. It's just conventionally grown food that's been that's been kind of being sold misleadingly as a boutique product of any some inherent value, which is it's not. It's probably sprayed with toxic chemicals. It's mass produced, um, and such. So, as far as off the land, we definitely want to encourage very like just homegrown goods, being shared. Um, but as far as, for example, like in the winter, it's kind of a border case. There's still like we will still be doing like cottage foods, cottage law foods. So it's
Mm.
still very much legal and acceptable based on what your county and state dictate. So, but there's for resellers and like concentrated animal feeding operations, those like industrial feedlots and just industrial food in general. That's not something we're going to be inviting onto off the land. We want to nourish local connection, what neighbors grew, um, stuff like that.
So, will you provide any sort of education for people to learn what grows well during the season in their areas, right? Because it seems like if we want to grow locally and focus on the abundance that we can grow by ourselves, right, with our community in our own land, then we could again share it or we could trade it of the abundance that we are growing. Then the key thing is what can grow well during this time, right? And that means whatever time of the year you are in. So we have to learn um, when to start the seeds, whether you're going to start them indoors or outdoors, or whether you're going to sow them directly to the ground. If you're going to start them in seed trays, then when are you going to transplant them to the ground? And of course, that's all based on your location and your climate, right? And the farther north that you are in the US, or of course, south in the southern hemisphere, then the stronger the winters and the shorter growing season that you have. So then, what sort of tools can these people in shorter growing seasons do to still produce some of their food once it's getting colder, right? And even in the winter, how could they still produce some of their food and that way they could trade it or barter or sell it even?
Yeah. So with off the land, we want to basically connect local gardeners, and so that not only for trading goods that they've grown, or but also just information in general, knowledge. Because um, I'm I just met with a lady in my neighborhood, and she was already teaching me how this kind of like microclimate zone that we have here works and what grows well. And I got to walk around her food forest, and it was an amazing experience. So it's already being connected and learning, and it's huge because I, especially kind of like with winter gardening in Florida, is like when, like you said, when do you start the seeds, indoors or outdoors? What will grow well? At least with off the land, we want to provide that information and connect you with like people who are like in your neighborhood local to you, so that you can be watching, observing what they're doing, and then you could be doing the same things, learning from them. But because that's when I moved to Florida, that's what I've been doing, because I was like, what, how do I get some veggies going here, so uh but yeah, so education is a pretty big deal. But you can always, like you kind of mentioned, the growing zones. You can look at USDA grow zones and find where you are on the map and see, you can always Google some resources about that. But I don't think nothing beats just being like having like a mentor in your area who's saying, hey, I'm going to be planting seeds indoors because of this or that. That way I can maximize my, year of produce. Then I'm going to be growing, doing another seeding so that I can have a continuous harvest type deal. So I just believe that it's really good to have somebody local to you that can inspire you, or you can be like, well, I didn't know that grew here. That's huge.
Definitely. And one of the things that is important about a platform like Off the Land would be to build a network of people that are already growing food or that are getting into growing their own food. That comes in both the form of fruits and veggies, but also keeping livestock, right? And
Hmm.
then you mention of other things, even products that they make, of course, can also be traded.
Right.
So, how important do you think it is for people to start making those connections and building those networks now instead of waiting for times to get tougher or things to get more expensive?
Yeah, it's no brainer. Plan something now. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to connect with nature. You're going to be just more in tune. It's gardening is like one of the best exercises you can possibly have. But you're going to have something of value. You're going to have something that's tangible because um, fiat, like currencies and stuff like that, they tend to lose their value. Like, for example, we're in America, and the dollar is losing its value. And when it's losing its value fast, tangible things are worth a lot of value. Things like precious metals and food. Um, so we can also get into that aspect, why it's important to start growing your own food and have value that you can, share and trade. Because during inflationary periods, the price of food increases. We witnessed that in the last 3 years. Things have just suddenly became so more expensive. But if you're producing food or animal like livestock or something like that, you're well off because now you can be asking for a lot more, uh, you know, as a price. So it's definitely a way to keep up with inflation. Whereas if you just have money saved in your bank, you're losing 5, 10, 15, maybe percent yearly of that. So it's a great investment. So if you have a food forest or maybe even edible landscaping or even microgreens, you're going to be saving depending on what your access to land or a lawn or you're going to be basically generating wealth in a way by producing something of value like edibles or any kind of like livestock or maybe quail eggs. If you live in an HOA and you can't have chickens, you can have quail, for example. Value, and people want it and they're willing to pay money for it. So start today. Invest in a fruit tree or two, depending what your situation is. Or maybe if you're urban, maybe a community garden or maybe a grow tower on your porch. You can have your own microgreens, for example, that you don't have to be paying somebody else for. Just some thoughts.
Definitely. And can you share a little bit of the similarities and differences between the Off the Land platform versus a farmer's market?
Yeah. So farmers markets are great. I think they kind of connect us to the seasons, nature, to local abundance. I love farmers markets, but there's also some downsides. For example, you think you're buying local produce, but it's just resellers. And there's a lot of issues with farmers markets for sellers because it's very kind of expensive to get started selling at a farmers market, and hundreds of dollars, to get the tent, the table, the money situation going. And then you have to be producing quite a bit as well. And there's a lot of uncertainty because can you name one business out there that works for a couple of hours a day and expects to make an income? It's almost unrealistic. As a gardener, I would want to be, as a farmer, I would want to be selling 24/7 if I can, at least a couple of days a week. And what's worse with the farmers market is that if it rains or if it's too hot, then the crowds don't show up. So everything that you prepared to take with you, it's going to be unsold. So now you just have to take it home and hope that something like next week will happen. So as much as I love farmers markets, they're just not a great way to make money for farmers. And let's say you are selling bee candles or bee products, well, they already have somebody who sells bee products, and they won't accept you because that will dilute the earnings of the other person. So what are you going to do? Maybe you'll try Craigslist, maybe you'll try like Facebook Marketplace or something like that. It's a hit and miss thing. Whereas off the land, it's like an online farmers market, but it's free. There's no costs at all to associate, just to get started at all, and continue using it. It's totally free. You don't have to like prepare everything on a Friday night to get it ready for Saturday. You just go as there's demand. That's when you go. Then that's when you sell. It's super flexible. It's on your time, basically, as a seller, or if you're giving it away, or if you're bartering. There's just many dimensions to it. So it's just a lot more convenient, and it's going to be kind of like a standardized way to do local food. So it's free marketing, because marketing it can be very tedious to get your idea or your product or service in front of a local audience. So we're going to be taking on that responsibility. So you don't have to. You just have educated consumers who want clean eating. They just want good food grown locally. That's their niche, and they're going to be coming to you basically and contacting you on Off the Land. And so hopefully that's convincing enough to try Off the Land instead of farmers markets.
Yes, I mean, it seems like the key thing is going local, sourcing local, right? And I guess we've gone from a society where we always found everything local to now we are so disconnected from where everything comes from, not just our food, but in
Yeah.
general, everything that we buy is, most of it at least, comes from the internet, or we really don't know where things come from anymore. So now there is sort of a lost or skill lost skill in how to communicate with people in person, and source the things that we need for everyday life. So now it's easier, or it's more comfortable for people to go to the grocery store, or to buy whatever goods and services from their smartphone or their computer, rather than building relationships and networking to then source whatever they need for everyday life. So how do we get to back to building those relationships and putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations, or um, uncomfortable places, rather than just buying the eggs from the store? Why would we even? And not why, but it's like, how do we do it? Because it does seem like it takes a little bit of effort and getting uncomfortable, right? So, what advice do you give to someone thinking that way?
Yeah, we're kind of getting disconnected as a society, aren't we? You drive by a street and you just see blue screens reflecting on people's windows. Everybody's just watching their own thing, and nobody's really hanging out and talking. And um, yeah, it's definitely kind of a loss of cohesion in our society. Um, my advice is to grow. I think it solves a lot of a lot of problems that we face. Or just a lot of disconnectedness, and it's a lonely way to live. I think, also, like, it's so rewarding to have like a barbecue in your street, like a neighbors get together and just hang out, and or if you are gardening together, or maybe, and obviously it goes beyond that. If you're hiking, if you're nature or anything like that, um, it's a very healing thing to be. It's very therapeutic to be with people enjoying the same thing you enjoy. For me, it just happens to be gardening, just nerding out on talking about seeds and what grows in a special area and learning that kind of stuff. So um, definitely connect with somebody like that. I think it's healing. It's awesome. It's an awesome feeling to somebody to listen to you, or to hear your stories, or share growing stories, or get inspired by the people, like, hey, that's a really awesome thing that you grow, and why not, you know, put it off the land so you can, be blessing other people with it, kind of thing. So yeah, just start a journey. I just think it's easier when for example, that let's say your neighbor is growing mangoes or lychees. Well, you have a conversation you can start, like, it's like you're doing it's visible, but sometimes you don't know what people are into. Like, it's hard to know, like, that your neighbor down 3 streets is growing, he has a lot of cuttings for fruit trees. But if you jump on off the land and you see that kind of thing, well, now you have somebody to learn from, to hang out with. You can be getting, like, grafting advice, or maybe little seedlings that are super local. How they do, how the parent plant works, what to expect from it and stuff like that. So there's just so much value in that, connecting and locally.
Yeah, for sure. And so, what long-term goals then do you have for Up the Land, and how do you see the platform evolving?
Well, I want to see everybody who grows anything, or is a homesteader, or is into permaculture. Like, I envision pretty much everybody who is into that kind of stuff to know about Off the Land in the next couple of years, and to communicate, and to grow amazing things, and learn, because a lot of people, you ask, like, well, they don't really know what a food forest is, or permaculture and stuff like that. But that's going to be that knowledge is going to be permeating our society soon. So that's what I see. Kind of people going back to a local, like, they've had the convenience, but they also see how global supply chains and these big major corporations, they kind of take advantage of the fact that we kind of stop paying attention. They sneak in bad ingredients into our foods. They don't really care how things are produced, and then um, things are affected, like health, as a result. And so I think people are moving back towards that direction now, and they want to be connected with nature and to learn. So um, and I think Off the Land will be kind of in the center of that, because we fill this niche of, I grew something, and now I have a product, and maybe I have too much of that product. What can I do? Well, you're sitting in an awesome position, because now you can connect, and you can share, and you can learn, and you can make money as a side income from that. So as gardening and becomes more and more popular, off the land would be kind of alongside of that, enabling it as, and then be like force multiplier for that kind of stuff. So, and both pulling new people in as well and encouraging people to get into it.
Definitely. And, of course, health is the driving factor when it comes to growing your own food. Of course, saving money is a big motivation, but I think mainly the health aspect is the number one thing, right? Knowing where your food comes from, the ingredients that is in it. But then that means, and it goes back to the question that I asked earlier on what sacrifices do we need to make on a personal level? And I meant it in a way that if we know that what we eat influences our health, right, big time, then that means that we need to make sacrifices on our nutrition, on our daily eating habits, right? Which is where growing your own food comes from. Because, of course, if you eat what you grow and also livestock that is locally sourced, then you're not eating all this processed, um, food from the stores. So that takes a lot of self control. It takes a lot of, um, getting used to new ways of eating. So I guess that's what I meant by sacrificing, right? So
Hmm.
what is your advice on that sense? Because at the end of the day, yes, it's easy to say that we want to eat healthy, that we want to eat locally, but that also means that we have to say no to a lot of foods that we have been raised in eating on a daily basis, right? So how do we really make that change?
Um, well, me personally, I made a lot of changes in what I eat. I used to eat a lot of carby foods, a lot of sugary foods, and as I got away from that and more low carb, more keto, I started noticing tremendous effects with for me personally, like how my blood sugar is, because I used to have crashes after I drink like a carbonated, like a sugary drink or something like that, and then I feel miserable and I feel I have to eat something else. So it's like those kinds of things. Eventually, our bodies catch up. You can't cheat your body for a long time. You can't live this American diet lifestyle and expect that everything's going to go okay for you. It's an illusion. Your body needs nutrients. It needs all kinds of building blocks, and if you don't provide that, eventually things are going to start deteriorating. So either gonna you should either like voluntarily do it, or your body is just gonna say, we can't do it today, and you're gonna be like, going to the hospital. So um, discipline is important. Saying no to things is important. Hopefully you can come across people in your life who will like confirm like, yes, I've changed the way I eat and now I feel abounding with energy, or they can say I ate the wrong way and I suffered as a result with brain fog or whatever. So hopefully you'll have some kind of like good role model in your life that will point you in the right direction. But if nothing, then if not none of those things, just people like me saying like, yeah, changing what you eat does have a huge effect on your performance, your body. Eating clean is super important, and knowing what's in your food is it's critical, because as going forward, like our societies demand so much of us, how we think, what we have to do, and how do we perform and stuff like that. So nutrition and diet is 101. It's what everything is based on. And then you can do your
Mhm.
supplements, but make sure you're getting the right nutrition. And it's important to not let yourself go. It's important to have discipline, and anything you do in your life, you have to have discipline and patterns, and it's important. So otherwise, you kind of like, you will slide down, and it's not, the end is not going to be pleasant. So regardless, you have to do the difficult things in life.
Yeah, and it also applies to even someone that might not be looking at growing their own food, and they just see, hey, I have the income to purchase all the food that I eat. But then there's, of course, the benefit of still buying it locally,
Yeah.
right? Because you know how that person grew it and what's in the food that you're eating. So a platform like this could connect that person that maybe they have no interest in growing their own food. They might live in the city in an apartment, and they just don't have any interest in growing it, but they want to buy from someone local. Then this is sort of a way to connect, right, with local people. It's really a network of building relationships, and then you deal with them on a personal level, right? And uh, as we mentioned, barter, which is the main thing, really, because it's what people used to do all throughout history. We've been, as a society, always trading with each other, but then with technology and globalization, that has sort of been lost. And this would be a great way to provide a tool for people to connect, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and you can find just awesome resources in your community. Let's say you're not really into growing yourself, but you like everything else about it. Well, for example, like agrotourism is becoming a big thing, where you get to go see how food is produced, how the animals are treated, what they do, how they grow, how everything, the cycle of life works. Like, you don't really win when you're disconnected from knowing those things. You don't. So
Yeah, I think that's a key aspect because um, you know, not everyone is going to have the space or be willing to move from an apartment, or let's say a townhouse where they don't have room, or maybe they're not interested in joining their community garden, even though we should all make an attempt to learn how to grow our own food. But for those that don't have that as a goal, but they still wish they knew where their food comes from, then there is
exactly.
a big demand, as you mentioned, for like agro tourism, someone that wants to at least know where it comes from, and they don't want to grow it themselves. They just want to have that local source. And I think that there's a big demand for that, right?
Hmm.
So that's what this platform is attempting to do.
Hmm.
And hopefully we could get people on board.
Yeah.
And what about for people that are going from growing in a place that they're renting, and they want to maybe purchase their own land? What challenges have you faced with that, and any advice that you would give to someone?
Yeah. So we used to have actually 2 acres of land in near Miami, in Redland, and it had wonderful like avocado grove established, and mangoes and lychees. And a year ago, we went to renting a house with just a lawn, and we can't grow anything on it. So a solution for us has been grow bags. So we can basically get our salad bar in the winter here. It's amazing, fresh vegetables, and also like like radishes, things like that. So um, it's possible, and I would definitely recommend it, even if you don't have space. Like, even if you have just a patio, um, get one of those, like, I think they call them green stock grow towers, where you have these little compartments and you can swivel it, and you have all these little things. You need like what, maybe like 4 square feet, 2 square feet footprint. Super easy. Um, but it's possible, even kind of like aquaponics. We have a little kit for that. It's more of a novelty, but that's very doable as well. Um, so we've gone from having land and chickens to just renting this year, but now we're kind of like looking forward ahead as well. Like, what can we do to expand? Once we move, we want a little bit of land again. So we're going to be facing it from the other way now, and we just want. There's a little bit of few requirements. We're still thinking like, what really do we need? Do we need a cow? Do we need a sheep? Do we need like just chickens? So that's kind of where we're at. But everybody's so different, so it's kind of hard to recommend things as a broad sweep, but it's definitely possible. And my only real advice, and it goes with anything, is just whatever you're doing, whether you're doing a garden, whether you're doing a business, whether you're doing some kind of like a group meetups or whatever, do it a little bit by each day. Do a little bit, do 15 minutes, contribute to it, 20, 30 minutes max, whatever, but just always do it. Don't lose momentum. Just use that momentum, and you will see things from a different perspective. And because you're there, you start to notice little details. And so whether it's growing a garden or something much, much bigger, just continue on that little pattern every day, and for gardening, that's been a huge success, because I'm able to notice problems earlier. I'm able to see things differently. So
When it comes to livestock, do you have in the plans to put into contact people that grow their livestock with, let's say, local butchers to then sell it through them?
yes. So I'm not 100% familiar with USDA rules on processing meat and stuff like that. So everything has to be, by your county laws. You can't navigate that. The OffTheLand is not for that. OffTheLand is like, you have to kind of like operate like by the rules, obviously. So, but with that being said, yes, like on OffTheLand, if you are providing any kind of services, whether it's designing food forests for people, or a butcher, or maybe, let's say, anything to do with gardening, animals, livestock, anything like that, anything natural, homegrown, handmade, obviously, please list your services on offtheland.net, so that people can reach out to you, because you're kind of like a local expert. You're there, you're available. So it's almost kind of like a classifieds in that regard. Um, there's a lot of value of building up local economies, relying on each other. I grow my sheep, for example. I don't want to butcher them, or maybe I don't have the time to butcher them, or maybe I don't have experience. Connect with somebody who's in your area, who does that kind of stuff, who's able, who's willing. You're literally investing in your own economy, in your neighborhood, in your city, to make it better, safer, because crime, as we know, when people lose their jobs and they're not able to do, support their families, what's the saying? Like, people get desperate if they skip a couple of meals, people get desperate. But your community economy is, it's dependent on you, and you vote with your dollar, of course, and you can either invest in your local community by making it safer, providing jobs with your money, or you could be helping it kind of, jobs go somewhere else, vacant lots. Now there's more theft, more issues. Now you don't feel safe. So it's like we have to invest in our local communities, our sphere of influence.
Yeah, invest in our local communities. And I guess that's where, again, sacrificing comfort and changing the programming, because there will be those to say, oh, if I have the money, why am I going to take the the time and effort to do all of this? If I could just go and keep going to the grocery store and buying it. So, of course, it won't apply to everybody, but I guess what I'm trying to go away is from a fear-based mentality and, oh, we have to do this because times could get tough, or inflation. But in reality, it shouldn't be that way, right? We shouldn't be motivated by negative reasons for doing it, and really see just the benefits of growing our own food, the quality, the freshness, the knowing who grew it, and then having that relationship with them, and then what can I provide to them, right? If
Mhm.
they give me eggs, what do I provide to them?
Yeah.
So it's more for that reason, rather. And of course, there it is very um, realistic on things could get tougher in life, in supply chain disruptions or inflation, or even what's in the food itself when it's mass produced. So all of those things are a very valid reason, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of people just don't see them as that they would ever happen, even though we already know what's in the food is bad. We've already seen the economy and the inflation, and we've seen the supply chain disruptions. But hey, if you haven't seen that already, I don't think there's enough that we could say to make someone see it, right? So
Right.
that's why I'm trying to lean more towards the benefits of it, right?
Hmm.
Because locally, it's like just having that relationship with my local butcher is something that I don't currently have, but it is something that we should all be able to know where, oh, this is my local butcher, or maybe have two or three different connections, one, or maybe one for chickens, another one for beef. And it's all things that have been lost throughout time, but we should get back to it, you know so now, what do you think? How do you think technology is shaping that future, and how is going to affect those local food networks?
Hmm. Well, I see a lot of trends where obviously like people are connecting over hobbies. There's a lot of kind of momentum where people connect in just niche things. There's meetups now, and if you like, well, I'll just stick with gardening and growing. Like if you like permaculture, like you can find something in your area for that. If you like how to butcher chickens, for example, you can find that in your community. So in that regard, I mean, use leverage the benefits of technology to learn, because we can literally learn anything right now at our fingertips. Um, so leverage the good, but beware that technology is powerful and that you have to be prepared for the future, because trends like AI, they're going to have consequences. They're going to rewrite our society in 5 to 10 years. So invest in that now, because you know nothing stays the same in life, and being complacent is it's not the best way to do things, because you could be potentially left out. You could be suffering the consequences. And yes, we want to focus on the benefits, like you said, because there's the upside is tremendous. You have so much to gain, but you have a lot to lose as well. So let that be a motivation to get into something like gardening, where you're literally creating value and you can connect with people. um, it's like, isn't like the saying goes, like it's more blessed to give than to receive, and that the foundation to any business is serving others. And if you want to be successful and you want to be wealthy, you have to serve others, whether it's through giving them products or fulfilling a service for them or entertaining them. The more people that you serve, the in a healthy society, right, the more you're going to have resources come back to you because you serve them, they pay you, you're more well off, you can reinvest, you can generate more, and so on and so on. So use technology now to learn some good skills, that are going to be valuable. Research, everybody is different. Everybody's so uniquely gifted in something, and everybody can do something better than other people. Find what you love doing, use technology to learn, and then offer those services or anything. So that's
Yeah,
my
and I
thoughts on technology.
definitely a lot that comes to mind when it comes to, of course, AI, but then also in general is what can we offer others, right? How you said, in the essence of business is you're helping, you're serving, you're either solving a problem or well, you're always solving a problem either through a problem through a product or service. And then the medium of exchange has been obviously always, not always, but recently, just the dollar, right? Just exchanging fiat currency. But that's not going to go away, of course, or it might go into more of a digital crypto based medium of exchange. But I think we're also going to go back a lot to the bartering system, right? So the more skills that we acquire and things that we could provide, then the more valuable that we could be, for others in our community. So I think that's where um, platforms like OffTheLand, that's what the goal is right, is to be able to exchange those ways of providing value other than just money, right? Other than just
Exactly.
a fiat currency. And then the bottom line is, what do we have to offer? And we've been sort of programmed in a way to exchange our time for a paycheck, right? And that's the vast majority of the population. And I don't think the solution is either for everybody to be a small business owner, right? That's not realistic either, right? If everybody was a small business owner, then who's going to run those businesses, right? Who's going to be the employees for those business? So even entrepreneurship, um, is not the solution for everybody, right? But if we all learn to provide some type of value one way or another, either growing food or learning a skill, then we could trade those skills, right? And that's where Of the Land is.
Hmm.
It's not just growing your own food or livestock, right? It's also what can you provide, even just as a skill. So I think the main thing is really to get outside our comfort zone and learn some new skills if you don't already have them. And if you do have them, know that you could provide that to people for things other than just exchanging dollars.
Hmm. Very well.
So yeah, no, I mean, I think that um, there's a lot to digest from growing your own food and sourcing your food locally. And if there's anything that the listeners take away from the call, that you would like for them to learn, what do you think is the most important part that we've talked about today?
Um, well, I would say the most important thing would be to plant something, and my preference is plant something edible and preferably something you like to eat. Um, Plant that, um, and kind of the biggest example in my mind is that in my old place where I used to live, our neighbor would bring us because she had a garden. She was always gardening, and she would get like hang a bag of star fruit and jackfruit and all these like tropical amazing fruits, right? Custard apple. And then we had chickens. Sometimes we would give her eggs, and we would give her papaya, right? And another neighbor across from them also had chicken and guinea, and they had mangoes. So we had like a little trade going, you know. But without technology, like off the land, it's kind of hard to know what exists beyond that neighbor to neighbor interaction, you know. But there's just more neighbors. There's more to discover. There's more abundance. There's people who have cows, they have sheep, and you have raw milk down the street, and now you have artisan goods, and then the other person has bees, and they can give you that, or you can buy it, whatever the means of exchange is. You can now become part of this parallel local food economy. It's like a decentralized supply chain that's just for you and you alone, you know, and you work with people in your neighborhood on that zip code level even to source a lot of the things that you would need or would want, including services. And it's empowering. You're creating a local resilient community that's around you. And you're becoming future proof in a way, because you're not reliant on fluctuations of, you know, inputs that are used for growing, for monoculture, for example. You know, you're seasonal, so you're improving your health. You're in tune with nature. You're gardening. You're healthy. So it's like one thing builds on another and another, and everything becomes complete, and you begin understanding the greater, you know, scope of life and the circle of life and stuff like that. You're connected. You see it. You observe it. So my takeaway, I guess, is to just push you to do it. You know, plant that first tree. Get a log, like a kit, to grow edible mushrooms, or maybe microgreens, or maybe a fruit tree, maybe something you like to eat. Just grow something, and hopefully that takes you on a wonderful adventure of serving, meeting people who are in the same thing, generating an income, and all things just start falling in place, you know. But it takes that one little thing of saying, yes, I will do maybe the inconvenient thing. I was going to watch something, but like, let me actually go do something. Let me connect. Let me, you know, see how our ancestors lived and grow something. It could be very fun.
Yeah, I think is changing the mindset and going back to more simpler ways, um, sort of shutting down distractions, right? We have a lot of entertainment, we have social media, and it seems like the even again making money and entrepreneurship, right? There is nothing wrong, of course, with having a successful business and um, being able to provide for your family and having inheritance to live for your children and your
Mm-hmm.
children's children, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's of course a place for that.
Mm-hmm.
As men, we are called to provide and protect, right, for our family. But then we also have to balance um, what is really important, because if we focus too much on that, then we could also um, not focus on the important parts of just today, right? And be grateful for what we do have right now and where we source our food, which is so important at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. Because yes, there is a lot of successful entrepreneurs, or even just someone that works in a 9 to 5 job that make a very good living, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe the part of saving money in growing your own food is not necessarily their driving force, right? In sourcing local food. But when it comes to growing your own food and knowing where your food comes from, again, the health part is such a key. And if you want to know, I mean, if you want to lose weight, let's say, or you want to maintain your ideal weight and shape body fat, right? Your muscle composition in your body,
Hmm.
you're going to have to know what you eat and keep track of it. Now,
Yeah.
you might not have to count your calories and track your macros. That is a very good tool, right? It's not 100% required. Some people could do achieve their goals without maybe counting calories and macros. Some people do find great help in counting calories and macros. But regardless, both need to know what they eat, right, on a
Yeah.
daily basis. If you're not keeping track of what you eat, it's going to be very hard for you to then be on that ideal weight and be on that ideal shape that you want to be. So then knowing where your food comes from is so key,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's as time keeps going by, more people are going to be um, understanding the importance of, hey, the closer that the food is from, the closer it is where I get it to where it actually grew, the more likely that it is even healthier, right?
Yeah. So true.
So, so I think it's building that mindset of people knowing first of all what you eat,
Yeah.
because it's very easy to for some time eat healthy and then you have a couple of days that you eat bad, which is why it's important to track it, to know what you eat, because then you knew, hey, the past couple of days I wasn't too careful and I ate all this junk food, and this is why now I gained some weight, right? So I think it's being honest to yourself as well. A lot of people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to know where their food comes from because that means that they have to, again, make changes
Yeah.
on their personal level. So it goes back to your mindset, what is important to you. And yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to what are your goals, and if health is an important part for you, which I think everybody would say yes,
Yeah.
then knowing where your food comes from is very key.
Hmm.
You know, but then
Agreed.
what would you say to that person that, the financial aspect is not the importance, right? Maybe they have an unlimited budget. Then why should they source their food locally?
Mhm. Well, it's again, it's you're not just a one person. Your actions affect others. So um, again, there's more transparency when you know how the food is grown locally. It's like you said, it's usually a better value, and you know what's in it. And you're investing in an area where you live. You're making it better with every dollar that you spend because majority of that money stays in the community. Whereas opposed to if you go to grocery store, that money is goes right out, far away from your community on average, percentage wise. Um,
And so how can we get even restaurants and chefs involved into these local food growing networks?
um, that's a great question. Um, and I want to give credit to Marcos from Florida Barter Hub, but we will be working together to do just that, to enable chefs to leverage um, local resources. Off the Land would provide them a list of all the people that are producing, growing, and or willing to grow for them, and really capitalizing on local foods. Like the the boutique nature of it and the appeal of food that's great for you, great for the environment. It's much more likely to not be exploitative because industrial farming, yes, it's cheaper for you to buy something. You're like, wow, what a great deal. It cost me nothing, but it did cost you something. It cost your local economy something because that food is so cheap to produce, it means somebody's cutting corners somewhere. So it means either exploitative labor in another country. Well, you're saying, well, it's in another country, it's cheaper for them, whatever. But ultimately, it comes around because now the farmers in your area are going out of business because they can't compete with that. And now your area is affected as well. So it's just all good things start with local, like growing, and of course, restaurants should be kind of following that trend as well, because they should see, wow, it's a selling point. Everything's local. It's fair trade. It lifts people out of poverty. It doesn't create poverty. So it's like you should feel good about that kind of stuff, So that's my thoughts. But we definitely are going to be working with people to bring that up about local foods and local restaurants and stuff like that.
Yeah, another one that comes to mind that you could probably use a lot is local caterers or meal prep companies, right? A lot of people nowadays that are into meal prepping, right, for the whole week. There's of course a lot of big companies out there that deliver all throughout the country, but there's also local services that are similar, right? And a lot of those are better because they provide ethnic, um, local ethnic food groups. So,
Mhm.
like if you're here in South Florida, you might find some Latin American or Hispanic meal prepping companies, right?
Mhm.
So, depending where you are, and based on what type of food you want to eat, that could be a very good addition, right? To have meal prepping companies to then find locally grown food. That would
Yeah.
be a great addition to the network, because in general, preparing your own food does take time,
Yes.
and some people just don't want to cook. Some people don't want to grow their own food.
Yeah.
But if we get the those meal prepping companies involved, then then people could still enjoy the benefits of locally grown food without even having to grow it or prepare it themselves.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of um, there's a lot of opportunity. The of course the hard part is building those networks and getting people to actually get involved.
Yes.
Because it just like anything, it takes effort, right? So how do you think that we could actually get people to get on board and go out of their ways to then build these networks?
Well, Off the Land is definitely in the local neighbor network building game. That's what that's our passion. We want to connect neighbors and abundance, and people can have wish lists for what they want grown locally, and everything can be like reviewed in a way where people are comfortable with each other, and kind of like we were talking about, the meal prepping companies and restaurants and like small local stores type thing. They can just tap into the information that we'll be providing, about where the networks are, how to get all this stuff. How much do you need? Well, we can, here's what we can provide via this seller. Um, there's abundance of that. Hey, restaurant, would you like to include this in your seasonal featured boutique meal kind of thing? So I think by creating a network of people, it's just a natural outlet that all these things are going to evolve on that ecosystem. But it all begins with people sharing, growing, sharing, um, and just being available and saying, hey, I want to change the course of our food, because the politicians at the top of the United States, they're not really incentivized to change it in this direction. You know, they're incentivized by major corporations that do things they want the way they've been doing things, you know, and it means a lot of pesticides, it means global supply chains, it means, you know, whatever that implies. But it's a grassroots movement, but people are excited by it. There's so much variety, like heirloom abundance, that, you know, it's hard to ignore. It's a fascinating thing. So the flavors, the aromas, the colors, you know, you can't get that in a store, you know, because the store just standardizes everything to be shipped, to maintain its shelf life. So if you've been living that kind of lifestyle where you're eating groceries, you know, veggies and produce, you like, news flash, you've been missing out, you know. There's so much, food tastes so different when you take it ripe, and I'm sure you can attest to that with having your own food forest, like you see in the background there. Uh, you know, people who just do grocery, they're missing out, and so, but people talk, and the direction is shifting now. So
Definitely. But even here in South Florida, where we could grow so many different types of fruits, I think that the knowledge is still missing. Even myself, I don't know a lot of the fruits that can be grown here locally, right, in a subtropical area. So, how can someone learn more about what they could grow locally, and other than just searching it online, right? And because, of course, that's the easy way to just go to Google and search, hey, what grows locally in my area. But yeah, any advice that you have on that?
um, me personally, I try to connect with people on all social media, right? All gardening forums, all things. I'm just, I love information, I love knowledge, I want to know, I want to learn. So I'm a sponge. I'm soaking that knowledge in all the time. But I understand not everybody wants to do that or willing to do that. So on Off the Land, you could be definitely finding that information a lot easier. Um, but so I kind of want people to understand that right now you have all these communities online, right? You have Facebook, and there's gardeners on Facebook. There is permies.com, and there's all these people who are into permaculture on there. Um, Reddit, and you can find gardeners there. So you have all these local social media, you know, locations where you can find gardening, right? But what Off the Land does is that it groups everything by your geography. So let's say there's 10 people in your area, in your street, in your little tiny area of the neighborhood. There's 10 people who are using all these different social medias or Reddits or Telegrams to do like chickens or growing. But what Off the Land is going to do is going to connect all of those people, and they can continue doing what they're doing on their respective platforms because they have their community, they're established there, they have that network, and they have that knowledge. But what Off the Land will do is it will connect them by local area, if that makes any sense. So you will have all of that knowledge, all that resource, but in a one geographic area. That's your neighborhood or your city or your zip code, and you'll be able to tap into that exponential bump in knowledge. You know.
Yeah, I think that that would be a great tool to have, especially for, as you mentioned, in a local geographical area, and it could still link the, wherever the source is, Facebook or Reddit or wherever it came from, but this would just be a more in your local area, and you could always connect in the out in the other platforms as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I mean, I'm excited. Hopefully, in any way that I could help out to grow and get it out, get the information out there for people to sign up here, especially locally. in the Florida area. So, just any final thoughts that you have, and also where people could find you on social media, and if you want to invite anybody to any local events or um, information that you would like to share.
Yeah, so just to recap, Off the Land is a place where absolutely anybody can list their uh, like edible goods that they've grown, or maybe artisan crafts that they've made that are natural, and absolutely anybody can list, even if you just have one fruit tree, or maybe you grow edible mushrooms, or maybe microgreens. You could be listing these things on Off the Land, and you could be generating an income. You could be learning about the people in your area who are doing similar things. You could be building community. You could be kind of creating your own self-reliance networks, like a parallel economy, And yeah, it's all free. There's no costs at all, and I think it'll be like a force multiplier to learn, to grow, to scale, to advance, to better yourself, and create a lot of opportunities for you in the future. And if you want to check it out, we're on offtheland.net, and we're pretty much on all social media as well, and all the links are there. So it's a great time to get into something like this. There's definitely a lot of momentum. There's so much interest in this now, and because of podcasts like this where people are talking, and people like you, for example, they assimilate information. They learn a little bit here, they learn a bit that, and then they present it, and then in a kind of like a nice, easy, digestible format. And so it's just going to grow and grow and grow. And pretty much any area that you look at is always kind of pointing towards the solutions being somewhere with local grown food and food forests, and being involved in growing and edible landscapes and permaculture or centropics and stuff like that. So it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to what next year or two will bring, and I look forward to pretty much people connecting over food and the wonderful things that will come from that.
Awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time today, and definitely encourage anybody to check out Off the Land, and see, also excited to see how next year the platform develops, and hopefully we can meet in person sometime next year, maybe do some type of event. It would be awesome.
I would love that.
Definitely in the future, we'd love to have you back in the show to see how things have developed, and see how else we could help people learn, about growing their own food and networking when it comes to producing fruits, veggies, and raising their own livestock. And again, I just want to invite anybody listening to visit our school community. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach us at our email or also Instagram. And again, man, thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.